Imagine, if you will, a single moment in horror. A moment so terrifying that it leaves a lasting impact on your mind forever. A film, a game, a comic book so chilling that horror itself seems to reform around it. Welcome to One Horrifying Moment. This is a special Halloween series featuring some of your favorite YouTube creators coming together to celebrate horror in its many different forms by focusing on some of the genre's greatest moments. From the subtly chilling to the insanely terrifying, you'll find everything you could want and more in the One Horrifying Moment playlist that this video is part of. And if you're a horror fan, you can add your own too. More of the greatest moments in horror are just a click away, if you dare. Now, let's begin. Stolen money, a seemingly innocuous motel, and an unforgettable shower. When Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho debuted in 1960, its transgressive horror and shocking twists seared themselves into the public consciousness. The result was that Hitchcock's most controversial and embattled film influenced horror forever. And while the film was based on Robert Bloch's novel of the same name, much of Psycho's appeal came from its unpredictable structure and shocking series of murders, keeping audiences from guessing what the film would ultimately be about. In fact, the secrecy of the film's story was so critical that Hitchcock's entire marketing campaign revolved around revealing absolutely nothing about the movie, even asking movie theaters to forbid anyone from entering late. Spoilers here, of course, for the now 60-year-old Psycho. The plot begins as deceptively simple. Real estate secretary Marion Crane, played by Janet Leigh, steals $40,000 from her work to pay off her boyfriend Sam Loomis's debts, immediately going on the run only to be forced to make an overnight stop at the dilapidated Bates Motel, run by Anthony Perkins' Norman Bates and his mother. But what has been Marion's story for the first half of the film is completely changed when she's murdered in the shower by a mother in one of horror's most famous scenes. But that's not our focus here. The second half of Hitchcock's film is suddenly turned into disarray, shifting its focus to Norman, Sam, and Marion's sister Lila. What was first a stripped-down thriller is turned into a twisted horror story, forcing two people to reckon with a psychotic terror that suddenly disrupted their lives. It all comes down to a final reveal, a moment of horror that thrusts the entirety of Psycho into new light, imprinting a psychoanalytical terror on decades of horror to come. One Horrifying Moment. But before we get to that, we have to return to Hitchcock's making of Psycho and its blatant transgressions of moral boundaries held in Hollywood filmmaking for years. With each slow reveal, each twist of the knife, Hitchcock's psychological horror undermines the viewer's preconceived notions of where this film is going and who its characters are within the context of its constantly changing focus. And in its final reveal, the true horror of Hitchcock's most shocking film is suddenly recontextualized, unveiling deeper, darker terrors beneath it all that would change horror forever. Psycho was seen as incredibly transgressive for its time, breaking several taboos in film, such as having one of the first flushing toilets on screen, implying premarital sex, showing its lead actress in varying states of undress, and all the psychological implications that spiral from its final twist. While Hitchcock's film may seem chaste compared to the wave of slashers that it inspired decades later, which took Psycho's heavily edited murders and psychosexual undertones and made them explicit, the sense of transgression still informs the experience of watching Psycho more than half a century later. Hitchcock was able to breach several boundaries in Hollywood after the erosion of the Hays Code, which was strictly enforced from 1934 through 1954, and forbid anything seen as immoral from playing out on screen. We won't go too far into the Hays Code here, but the softening of the enforcement let Hitchcock more directly indulge the darker impulses that had been subtly influencing his filmography in the decades prior. Most importantly was the tiny budget that Psycho was filmed on, only $807,000 and largely using the television production crew from the weekly series Alfred Hitchcock Presents. That tight budget and small crew was necessary due to Paramount Pictures, who Hitchcock was under contract with, being appalled by the subject matter of the film the director wanted to make. As a result, Hitchcock financed the movie through his own production company and shot it at Universal Studios. That tight budget, in conjunction with Hitchcock's love of Henri-Georges Clouzot's thriller Diabolique, which debuted only a few years prior, necessitated the use of black and white film. But it's these low-budget, almost cheaply made aesthetics that combine with Hitchcock's masterful direction, cinematographer John L. Russell's lush lensing, and composer Bernard Herrmann's driving, unnerving orchestral score that offset what would have otherwise been dismissed as a small, exploitative cash grab. The feeling of Psycho is the feeling of taboo. From its opening shot that pushes into the window of a lover's secret rendezvous to Norman's peeping Tom leering, there's a sense that we shouldn't be seeing what we're seeing, and that what inevitably unfolds on screen is something we shouldn't know exists. Psycho is a film that purposefully, sharply derails itself, wrecking the previously established narrative we as viewers have bought into multiple times to cause the film to reset its focus. While Marion's death is the most emblematic of these changes, it isn't the only one. Hitchcock's direction and Joseph Stefano's script shifts to Norman after Marion arrives at the motel, breaking away from her for the first time to disorient the audience. What we thought was a noir-tinged romance like many of Hitchcock's previous films is suddenly dealing in a different cinematic language. After the murder, Psycho is thrown into disruption, not sure who to follow until settling on private investigator Milton Arbogast, only for his murder to once again play out the Marion switch, only in a compressed timeline. The purpose of Psycho's frequent, unannounced changes is to keep the audience from getting a grasp on what to expect. Each shift in focus recontextualizes Psycho's story, making us wonder who it truly belongs to and forcing us to look at everything that came before in a new light. Suddenly, this isn't a movie about a woman making a life-ruining mistake and trying to rectify it. It's about something deeply sinister at the center of everyday life. Like the Bates house's California Gothic architecture standing as a dark tower in the midst of a sun-drenched land of opportunity, Lila and Sam begin to uncover broken pieces of something terrible hidden in plain sight. And it's this off-kilter continual self-revision that sets us up for our ultimate moment of horror.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Haven't you?
If Psycho's first half is the story of a woman whose life is abruptly ended by complete chance, then its second half is about the many different lives inexorably pulled into the vortex of madness. The terrifying truth of the Bates Motel pulls in Arbogast, Sam, and Lila as they search for Marion, and what that truth is defies logical assumptions. So much of Hitchcock's film revolves around perception, both literal watching and a character's preconceived notions of someone else. Marion's paranoid view while escaping with the money, the trailing cop watching her every move, Norman watching Marion undress through a hole in the wall, even the taxidermied animals that seem to watch Marion and Norman's dinner together. Long portions of Psycho's first act simply focus on Marion driving, the camera placed directly in front of her and the actress looking straight down the barrel while voiceovers of other characters play. The result is that Marion's fears and imagination are manifested in something the audience can perceive.
Yes, Mr. Lowry?
Carolyn? Marion still isn't in?
No, Mr. Lowry, but then she's always a bit late on Monday mornings.
Buzz me the minute she comes in.
Combining with the camera's unblinking focus on her eyes to combine literal and emotional perception. And of course, there's the swirling, empty drain that becomes Marion's lifeless eye after her murder. A shot that quickly dollies and zooms in on the stolen money hidden in a newspaper. It's Hitchcock at his most taunting, forcing audiences to realize that the story they've witnessed for the first half of the film isn't the real story after all. And we've been forced to come to terms with our perception being wrong for the first of two times. Pair the use of perception with recurring motifs of mirrors and shadows, and we can see how Psycho subtly hints at our perceptions being continually obscured and ourselves being doubled. These characters are constantly in dialogue with themselves as every situation seems to force self-reflection, both literally and figuratively. For some, like Marion, it's the chance to rethink her actions. And for others, like Norman, it's the shocking truth that permanently shatters his mind. Pair that with Hitchcock's repeated bird imagery and we have a sinking feeling that something terrible is waiting to strike. Unlike Hitchcock's Rear Window, which made us the willing participant in its central character's voyeurism, Psycho places all manner of conflicting views in contention with one another to challenge our own notions. Arbogast believes Marion is hiding out somewhere with the stolen cash. Lila and Sam believe that Marion was killed over her money, and Norman believes that his elderly mother killed Marion in a psychotic rage. It's these conflicting, incorrect perceptions that draw us toward the gaping mystery at Psycho's center. And it's no mistake that this hole in things is filled in the Bates home's fruit cellar. Everything in Psycho has been leading up to this moment. The threat of Mother, Norman's unraveling mind, the search for answers, and the reveal that Mother died in a murder-suicide a decade earlier. It all comes together in this one horrifying moment. Hitchcock's great scare here is not from a sudden jump or a gruesome killing. It's in the stark, undeniable reveal of the truth. The unveiling of madness that we piece together from a dead body and a killer dressed as his mother. All the while, Hermann's score connects Marion's death, where she alone saw Norman for who he truly is, with her sister's own sudden revelation. It's here in the fruit cellar where Hitchcock's use of stark light and obscuring dark dance back and forth with the swinging light bulb, fully exposing the secret that's been hidden for years. Norman, now exposed, is quickly subdued by Sam, and the immediate danger is ended. But we're left with the horrifying truth. Hitchcock once described the difference in surprise and suspense as the difference between a bomb suddenly going off under a table with no warning versus an audience knowing the bomb is there and hoping the characters get away before it goes off. The reveal of Mother is these two ends of the spectrum at once. The suspense of knowing that Lila is in danger without her realizing it, and the surprise of what the true nature of that danger really is. As Hitchcock said, there's no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it. If Marion's death is the bang of Psycho, then its second half is the terrifying wait for the bomb to go off yet again. After the reveal of Mother and the arrest of Norman, Psycho comes to a screeching halt for a police psychologist to explain the reasons for Norman's psychosis. It's overbearing, outdated, here for the sake of audiences. An Oedipal complex within dissociative identity disorder within an exposition dump. But it also tees up Psycho's final reversal of perception, leaving our main characters out in the cold to once again focus on Norman, fully taken over by Mother, who schemes to gain our sympathies.
They'll see. They'll see and they'll know, and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
After everything, this has been Norman's story. The story of one man's relationship with his mother, and the ultimate perversion of that relationship within the mind.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
The true terror of Psycho is the randomness of death. The arbitrary nature of murderous insanity that could come into a person's life at any minute. Like the shower drain, Marion's eyes, or Mother's empty sockets, Norman Bates is a black hole of insanity, pulling in random passers-by without even knowing of his own actions. Today, we can see that Norman's psychosis isn't realistic or sympathetically portrayed, but we can see core tenets that are still terrifying. A mild-mannered man trapped by his own mind, a product of a terrible past that's been buried but not forgotten. Hitchcock's Psycho is one of the most formative films in the history of the horror genre, not just for its iconic score or its terrifying scenes, but for its willfully transgressive outlook, forcing us to stare into the insanity lurking in everyday life, to reckon with the horror human beings are capable of, and admit that it's closer than we're willing to believe. And it all comes down to one horrifying moment. Hi, and thanks for watching this very special Halloween video and the kickoff for the One Horrifying Moment video series. This was something I wanted to make to celebrate Halloween and the many incredible aspects of the horror genre, and right now, some of your favorite YouTubers have uploaded videos of their own diving into their favorite moments in horror, and you can find them all collected in the playlist down below. Movies, video games, comic books, and more are all being covered, so if you love horror, and even if you don't, please check out these videos because they're absolutely worth your time. I'm incredibly thankful for so many people taking part and putting together some amazing stuff. And if you want to make your own entry into One Horrifying Moment, please do, and contact me here or on Twitter so that I can add your video to the list. Thanks to everyone for watching, and as always, thank you to my patrons for continuing to support me. It's helped make this Halloween season of videos possible. I hope that you have a lot of fun this holiday. Happy Halloween!